Well, good evening. Welcome to tonight's edition of Bedtime Stories with me, Pastor Michelle. And so I do hope everyone is doing okay. I know I've been dealing with some arthritis in my knee. It's ongoing pain that I've had since my car accident 2 years ago, which kind of stinks. But it's just a new reality for me. Plus, I'm getting old. I'm 37 years old. Not as young as I used to be, so which kind of stinks, you know. Anyway, so I do hope you all had a good Tuesday. So I wanted to get us started with her story, and so tonight we're going to hear about another famous woman who made a big difference. And so, as I said, I do hope everyone is doing okay. I'm actually in the process of working on my sermon for Sunday. And you never know where I'm going to draw inspiration. And so my inspiration, just as if anyone even cares, is coming from the show Star Trek, which I've actually never watched. And I'm watching the very first episode right now. And mostly, I'm not watching it. I'm doing other things while I watch it. But what I mostly am intrigued by is the opening monologue, or I don't know if monologue or opening credits, and what they say in the opening credits of the show during the opening credits. You know, they talk about boldly go where no one has gone before. And so I'm focusing in on how Jesus, he boldly loved whom no one had loved before. And just food for thought. And so I'm talking about that. And to be fair, Jesus did go where other people didn't want to go, because I'm just focusing on the passage where they say Jesus, hung out with gluttons and drunkards. And anyway, so that's kind of where I'm hoping to take my sermon this Sunday. So I'm all ready for a Star Trek kind of theme. So, my friends, let's hear about our woman of the night, or woman of the day. I'm reading a story about a woman. So I did not mean to say woman of the night. That has different connotations. I'm reading about a woman, and that's Larry, my brother's dog. So anyway, our woman tonight that we're going to talk about is Mary Anning, who is a fossil hunter whose discoveries changed science. So let's hear about Mary, shall we? Bet there is just something about Mary. All right, so Mary was born on the south coast of England in 1799. Her parents, Richard and Mary, were poor, even though Richard worked hard as a carpenter to feed his family of 9 kids. Little Mary was a bright, curious child. Some people say that when she was just a year old, she survived a lightning strike, which killed 3 other grown-ups. At the time, everyone thought it made her more cleverer, but we know it just meant that she was very lucky. Mary loved to walk along the seashore looking for fossils and seashells, which she sold to tourists. She was in just the right place for her hobby, because the coast near her home is one of the most important locations for the fossils of the Jurassic period. But at that time, knowledge about dinosaurs and fossils were very limited. Fossils were called dragon's teeth and were believed to be the stuff of the myth and legend, not scientific fact. Geology was a brand new science, and people did not trust it. The Bible story of creation was the only accepted version of the history of the world, and the notion of evolution was only just coming into being. When Mary was 11, her father died, and suddenly it became much more important to earn money selling the fossils she found so that she could help feed her family. In fact, it is believed that the traditional tongue twister, she sells seashells on the seashore, was inspired by Mary. Mary began to spend all her time fossil hunting, and not long after her father's death, she and her brother Joseph discovered a huge skeleton. As they worked to uncover it, they realized they had found the bones of a prehistoric sea creature. It was the first ever discovered. Ichthyosaur ever discovered. At the age of 12, she became one of the world's most famous paleontologists, long before Ross Geller, or scientists who study fossils. She was a very unlikely scientist with no formal training and little education, living in poverty. She had to continue selling fossils just to help make ends meet for her family. She and her trusty dog Trey scoured the seashore every day, searching tirelessly. Many of the fossils she found were the rather unglamorous sorts. Mary soon became a respected expert, though. Several years later, Mary made her next great discovery. Her drawing of the plesiosaur that she found was so good, other scientists did not believe her at first. No one had ever seen one before, and this new discovery earned Mary huge respect from her fellow paleontologists. In 1828, she made another great find, the first parasaur, or flying reptile, to be found in Great Britain, and the first complete skeleton found anywhere in the world. Although as a woman she could not be a full member, Mary was finally made an honorary member of the prestigious Geological Society in London, England. Even though Mary was not properly credited in the museums where her finds were displayed, her discoveries shook the scientific world. She made some of the most important geological finds of all time. Mary's work and her ideas about how the past and present were connected paved the way for scientists such as Charles Darwin. Her discoveries helped Darwin and other scientists build their ideas about evolution. Had some Coke, and that's what happens. Showing that the Earth was much older than previously believed, and that had once been full of creatures that were now extinct. We will never know what other discoveries Mary might have made because she died very young, but her short life was hugely important. Her discoveries helped establish geology as a new and respected area of science, creating new ways of thinking about the history of the Earth and changing science forever. She is credited with saying there's a connection of analogy between the creatures of the former and present world. And she says the carpenter's daughter has won a name for herself and deserved to win it. Well, that was actually Charles Dickens that said that. So there is a picture of her discovering that the bones, the fossils, it's hard to see that. And there's a drawing of her, and there's her another drawing. So there we go. There you have it. Mary Anning. Tomorrow, our woman of the day will be Katherine Johnson, the pioneering NASA mathematician and physicist. So, my friends, tonight is June 30th. And so let's switch gears, shall we? Whoa, that was pretty fancy, wasn't it? So when I said earlier I had Coke, I did mean Coke Zero. Okay. Just in case anyone was wondering. So, June 30th, my friends. Sorry, I get a little slap happy. I'm a little tired, I won't lie. So, tonight's story is called Good Housekeeping. Housekeeping? Sorry. All right, so let's hear this story, shall we? Snow White and the Prince were going to be married. Her dear friends, the 7 dwarves, were filled with joy to see Snow White so happy. But they know they were going to miss her, not to mention her wonderful cooking and how she kept their cottage so clean and tidy. Snow White was also worried about how the little men were going to get along without her. She decided it was time they learned how to cook and clean for themselves. Yeah, that's true, right? All right. First, let's see you sweep out the cottage, she said. Remember to push the dirt out the door and not just move it around on the floor. The dwarves all grabbed brooms and set to work. Don't forget to open the door first, Snow White added. Then she moved on to the next task. Now we'll do the laundry. First you heat the water over the fire, then you scrub the clothes with a bar of soap, rinse them, and finally hang them on the line to dry. That sounds like a lot of work. Dopey was first in line. He jumped into the tub and rubbed the bar of soap all over the clothes he was wearing. Dopey, it's easier if you wash the clothes after you've taken them off. A bit later, the dwarfs trooped into the kitchen for a cooking lesson. Now we're going to make stew. You take a little everything you have on hand, throw it into a pot, and let it simmer for a long time. As Snow White was leaving, Doc said, "Don't you worry, Snow White. We're going to be just fine." The next night, the dwarfs made dinner and invited Snow White and the prince to join them. When the guests arrived, Dopey led them over to the large pot simmering over the fire and grandly lifted the lid. An old boot, some socks, a bunch of flowers, and a cake of soap were floating on the top. "We made it with a little bit of everything we had on hand, just like you said," Sleepy said. "Perhaps we should go over that recipe again," Snow White said with a laugh. So my friends, Tomorrow's story will be from the movie Dumbo. And so I do hope you all have a very good night. And I hope you stay safe and stay well and continue spreading love as much as you possibly can. And continue looking for joy and finding things that make you laugh and smile. So much love to all of you and pleasant dreams tonight.